My name is Nadia, and my story is one of searching, questioning, and ultimately finding the unexpected. I grew up in a devout Muslim household where faith was not just a belief, but a way of life. I followed the prayers, the customs, the rules, but deep inside, I felt something was missing. Questions would surface in my mind, questions I was too afraid to ask out loud. Was God truly who I had been told He was? Why did I feel an emptiness even when I followed every command? Over the years, my curiosity turned into a quiet rebellion. I began exploring other beliefs, reading about different faiths, and praying in secret for answers. It wasn't an easy journey. I was terrified of being discovered, not just by my family, but by my community. I felt like an outcast even before I truly left. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being led toward something greater, something truer. The day everything changed was one I will never forget. It was supposed to be an ordinary evening, but it turned into a nightmare. I was trapped in a house fire, flames surrounding me, smoke choking the air. The heat was unbearable, and I could feel my strength fading. I screamed for help, but no one came. In those final moments, I thought about my life, my choices, and all the fear I had carried. Oddly, I wasn't afraid anymore. A deep peace settled over me, as if someone unseen was holding me. And then, everything went dark. I thought it was the end. Little did I know, it was only the beginning of a journey far beyond anything I could have imagined. When the fire consumed me, I thought it was over. Just darkness, silence, and nothingness. But what happened next was nothing like I imagined. One moment I was gasping for air, and the next I felt as if I was floating, weightless and free. I looked down and saw my body lying there, surrounded by flames, motionless. It was strange to see myself like that, and yet I wasn't scared. I felt detached, as though the pain and struggle had been left behind with my body. Then, everything around me began to shift. The fire disappeared, and I found myself in a place I can't fully explain. It wasn't like anything I had seen before. Part of it was so full of light, warm and inviting, while other parts seemed shadowy and distant, like they were holding secrets. I felt pulled toward the light, as if it was calling me. But at the same time, I couldn't shake the weight of my unanswered questions. For the first time in my life, I felt an overwhelming peace, unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't the kind of peace you find in a quiet moment. It was deeper, filling every part of me. Yet, with that peace came a strange sense of clarity. All the questions I had carried with me, about God, about life, about why I felt so lost, came rushing back, louder than ever. I wondered if I was ready for what I was about to face. What if the truth I had been searching for wasn't what I hoped it would be? In this mysterious place, everything felt exposed, as though nothing could be hidden anymore. I knew I had crossed a line, and there was no turning back. The answers I longed for were close, but was I ready to hear them? I don't know how long I drifted in that strange, peaceful place, but then everything changed. Suddenly, I saw someone standing before me, radiating a light so pure and warm that it felt like it was wrapping me in a hug. At first, I didn't understand who he was, but the moment our eyes met, I knew it was Jesus. He didn't look like the pictures I'd seen growing up. He looked real, alive, and so full of love that it was overwhelming. I expected him to judge me, to point out every mistake I'd made, every wrong decision. But he didn't. Instead, he smiled, and that smile alone brought me to tears. I could feel his love, unconditional and deep, as if he had known me my whole life. Then he spoke, and his voice wasn't just heard, it was felt. He said, "You've been searching for me for a long time, even when you didn't realize it." Those words hit me like a wave. He knew about my doubts, my struggles, and how I had left everything behind to find the truth. I couldn't stop myself from asking, why didn't you reveal yourself to me sooner? Why did I have to go through so much pain and confusion? His response was gentle, yet powerful. I was always with you, guiding you. Every question, every step you took away from what you once believed. It was part of your journey toward me. You had to walk through the darkness to recognize the light. He showed me moments from my life, times when I thought I was completely alone. But there he was, subtly guiding me, protecting me, even when I didn't know it. Tears streamed down my face as I realized how blind I had been to his presence. In that moment, I felt a love so profound that it changed something deep within me. It wasn't just about seeing him. It was about knowing that he had never given up on me, even when I had given up on myself. As I stood before Jesus, he looked at me with an expression of such deep understanding that it made me feel completely exposed, yet completely safe. I knew he could see everything, my doubts, my fears, my confusion, and he didn't turn away. Instead, he said, "You've carried so many questions, and now it's time for you to know the truth." I felt his words, not just in my ears, but in my very soul. He began to reveal the things I had spent my life trying to understand. He spoke about God, not the distant, harsh figure I had once imagined, but a loving Father who created us out of pure love, wanting nothing more than for us to know him and walk in relationship with him. He said, "The purpose of life is not about rules or rituals. It's about love. Love for God, love for others, and love for yourself." Everything flows from that. Hearing those words felt like a weight lifting from my heart. I had spent so much of my life trying to earn approval from people, from religion, even from God, and now I realized I never had to. Jesus also addressed the misconceptions I had once believed, the fear-driven beliefs, the anger I carried toward those who hurt me, and even the doubts I had about him. "You struggled because you were searching for something real," he said. "Truth doesn't come from fear or control. It comes from knowing me, and through me, knowing the Father." He explained that every struggle I faced had been allowed to shape me, to draw me closer to understanding who God really is. He didn't shy away from my pain or pretend it didn't matter. Instead, he showed me how even in my darkest moments, he had been there, working in ways I couldn't see. In those moments, clarity replaced confusion. I understood that the answers I had been searching for weren't hidden. They were waiting for me in him all along. I felt a peace I had never known before, as if my soul had finally found the home it was created for. As I stood in that realm with Jesus, he gently said, "There's something I want you to see." Suddenly, it was as if a screen appeared before me, but it wasn't like watching a movie. It was my life. Every moment felt alive, and I was not just watching it, I was feeling it all over again. I saw myself as a child, sitting quietly in the corner while the adults around me argued about faith. I could feel the confusion I had back then, the way I wondered why so many rules were tied to fear and punishment. Jesus said, "Even then, your heart was searching for truth." Then the scene shifted, and I saw myself as a teenager. I was sitting alone after being scolded for asking too many questions about religion. I remembered how afraid I was of the answers, but I couldn't stop asking. Jesus spoke softly. "That courage to question? It was a gift. Even though it brought you pain, it was leading you closer to me." I was shown some of my darkest moments, the heartbreaks, the rejection from loved ones, when I began to doubt, and the deep loneliness I felt when I left my old beliefs behind. Each memory was raw, but instead of the pain overwhelming me, I could see something new, his presence. In every memory, I realized Jesus was there, even when I didn't know him. "I never left you," he said. "Even when you thought you were walking alone, I was walking beside you." But it wasn't all pain. I was also shown moments of incredible bravery, times when I spoke up for myself, stood firm in my beliefs, and sought out knowledge despite the risks. Jesus smiled as he said, "Every step you took in courage brought you closer to the destiny I had for you." Finally, I saw the moment I made the decision to leave Islam. It was terrifying, yet liberating. Jesus showed me how that choice was the culmination of all the pain, courage, and questions I had carried. "I was leading you to freedom," he said, "even when you didn't know my name." By the end of it all, I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose. My life wasn't random, and my struggles weren't meaningless. Every moment had shaped me into who I was, bringing me to this encounter with him. As I stood with Jesus, he said, "There's more I need to show you." I didn't think anything could surprise me at this point, but I was wrong. He waved his hand, and suddenly, I was looking at the world I'd just left behind. It was strange and emotional, seeing it from this perspective. The first thing I saw was my family. My mother was crying, clutching my scarf, her face pale with grief. My siblings sat around her, some angry, others in shock. It hurt to see their pain, but Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "Look closer." As I watched, my sister, who had always been the quiet one, started speaking. She said, "I don't understand why she left her faith, but maybe we should try to understand instead of judge." It was a small moment, but I could see it was the beginning of something bigger. Then I saw my friends. Some of them were furious, calling me a traitor even in death. But there were others who couldn't stop thinking about my choices. One of them, someone I never thought paid attention to my struggles, picked up a book I had once left behind, a Bible I had hidden during my journey. She started reading it, not out of faith, but out of curiosity. The most unexpected thing was the impact my story had on complete strangers. Somehow, word of my death and my life started to spread. People who had never met me were talking about my courage, about how I had sought truth even when it cost me everything. Jesus showed me how this ripple effect reached places I couldn't have imagined. People who were questioning their own beliefs, people who felt trapped, and even those who had lost hope entirely. Jesus turned to me and said, "You see, your life and your death were not in vain. Through your story, others are finding the courage to seek me and the truth." I was overwhelmed by the thought that even in death, my life had meaning. It wasn't just about my journey. It was about planting seeds in others. I stood there, still absorbing the weight of everything Jesus had shown me. It was as if the veil had been lifted, and for the first time, I understood what I had been searching for all my life. But then, as I stood there in awe, something shifted. Jesus looked at me with a softness in his eyes, yet his gaze was firm. "Your journey is not over," he said, his voice both gentle and commanding. My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? I've already been through so much. I'm ready to rest," I replied. Jesus smiled, his warmth wrapping around me like a blanket. "I know the burdens you carried in life, and I know you longed for peace, but there is more you must do." I felt a stirring deep within me, a sense of purpose rising up. "But why? Why would you send me back after everything?" He took a step closer, his eyes filled with compassion. "You were searching for truth, and now that you have found it, you must share it. There are others still lost in the darkness, unaware of the light that can free them. You must go back and be a beacon for them." I felt a mix of fear and awe. But what if they reject me? What if they don't understand? Jesus' expression was full of love, but also a quiet strength. "You will face opposition, yes. There will be those who mock you, who reject you. But remember, It is not your words that will change hearts. It is your love, your forgiveness, and your fearless courage. You must live out the truth you've found, even when it's difficult. This is your mission now. I swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. But how? Where do I start? Start with love, he said softly. Love those who hate you. Forgive those who wrong you. Live fearlessly in the face of opposition, and you will show them the path to freedom. In that moment, I knew my life would never be the same. I was being called to return, not just to share what I'd learned, but to live it out with courage. The moment Jesus finished speaking, a wave of warmth enveloped me. I could feel myself starting to fade, my connection to the realm of light and peace slipping away. I wanted to stay. I wanted to remain in that place of perfect understanding, where everything made sense. But I could sense Jesus' hand gently guiding me away. "It's not your time," he whispered. "You must go back." Suddenly, I felt myself being pulled, drawn back toward my earthly body. It was a sensation like no other, a mixture of resistance and surrender, like I was being tugged between two worlds. The next thing I knew, I was gasping for breath, my lungs filled with the air of the living. I could hear voices, frantic and full of disbelief. "She's alive!" someone shouted. I opened my eyes, blinking against the bright light above me. I was lying in a hospital bed, surrounded by doctors and nurses who looked as though they had seen a miracle. I felt dizzy, disoriented, but also strangely clear. It was like waking from a dream, but the dream had left me with more than memories. It had left me with a purpose. My mind raced. I had been dead. I had seen the truth. And now I was back. I was alive again, but not in the same way as before. Something had changed within me. The fears that had once held me captive no longer seemed so important. The doubts that clouded my mind had been replaced with a clear and unshakable certainty. As I sat up, a sense of urgency filled me. I knew I couldn't keep what I had learned to myself. My mission was clear. I had to share the message of love, forgiveness, and truth that Jesus had shown me. No matter what it cost me, I was no longer afraid. I was ready to live the life he had called me to speak out, and to show others the way. I wasn't sure how it would unfold or what challenges I would face, but one thing was certain: I couldn't remain silent. The truth I had been given wasn't just for me. It was for everyone who was still searching, and I was going to make sure I did my part to help them find it.